Okay, this is the last one of my series that you people have to try to understand. Um, there's one thing I wanted to say, which I'm not sure I did. As you know, the poster's up there on the screen, the Steinway artist, which I am, and I have been for many years. The nightmare of my home in New York, and I can tell you it was some nightmare. I don't think many people could ever try to go through a thing like this, because I lived at that home for 50 years almost. And I told you, I think, I was up there in age. And it wasn't easy, but I'm young for my age, and I managed to get through this, and I believe in God, and He has a purpose for everything. And maybe the purpose is it gives me a lot of grounds on what these people did to me. Now, another thing, this lawyer by the name of Benny, anyway, he arranged this whole thing that my house was, it was supposedly against the loan where this dishonest judge, Barone, had made me get this $410,000 in a big hurry. And this is finally, they had many attorneys, I think, but this one attorney is the one, from what I understand, that arranged this thing of me being thrown out of my house. So anyway, there were a lot of, we figured they were undercover police, but you know, I'm just saying this, I don't know for sure who all these people were. I thought they were quite vicious in trying to get us all, just get the two of us out of the house, one of my group and myself. And what really hurt me is some of my valuable things have disappeared. My husband got a piece of artwork in a coffee table, Philip Laverne coffee table. It was very beautiful, and they threw these things in storage. I had them replaced in another storage room, and I never found the coffee table. I had a beautiful Kendall furniture. They were one of my sponsors, Kendall. We had a dining room outfit by their company, and the bottom of it had a huge, heavy glass piece on top, which I did find in the storage, but I didn't find the base of the dining room table. So of course the answer is, what are you going to do with a table without a base? So I think there were a lot of vicious things they did. They threw things in boxes, like from one room downstairs, another room someplace else, they'd throw things in. It wasn't a nice packing affair or anything. I think some of my sofas must have been sitting in the rain. They're water spotted and everything. So when it came to my piano, I even had a beautiful jacket I can't find. There are a lot of things I can't find. Unbelievable. And I had, you know, posters from Russia. I had on the wall, it makes me too upset. I really can't say it. The final upsetting thing is my husband bought this beautiful 9-foot concert grand piano for me. It's a nice story. Actually, the famous pianist Lily Krauss was at Steinway Hall and heard me play and try out different pianos. So she walked in, she said, "Who's playing?" My husband said, "It's my wife." She said, she has a beautiful touch. It's beautiful." And he said, "Well, what should I get her? Should I get her a concert grand or a smaller grand for our home?" She said, "If you have a large enough home, I would say definitely get her a concert grand, because if she gives concerts, she knows, you know, the balance, the weight distribute. You know, it's a better thing to play on all the time if you have to give concerts." So it's kind of a pleasant story in the midst of all this. But what I'm trying to say is, when they were throwing all my furniture out, I said to them, "I want to watch when you take my piano out." Because, you know, when they move a piano, they have to take the legs off and the pedals. And it's a large, large piano. Beautiful. And they said, "No, you're not allowed to watch. We know how to move pianos." And of course, I was so upset, I couldn't even cry. I mean, I was so upset. But anyway, I went out thinking, well, hopefully, at that time I thought they probably did know how to move furniture. They had 3 big moving vans out there. So anyway, it went to a storage room, and when they moved everything, I had everything moved to another storage room. A friend of ours let us share half of his huge storage room. And actually, thank goodness, I caught the piano bench. I got that because it was sitting around there, and I said to someone, "What are you doing with this bench?" He said, "Oh, I don't know. Did you want that?" I said, "Of course. Belongs to the piano." So I took it in my car. And then later on, we looked, we couldn't find the pedals to the piano or the legs. So before all this, I'm going ahead a little bit now. Before all this, when they moved it to the other storage room, they came out and said she isn't going to get her piano unless she pays a ransom fee of $500 for her piano, on top of the moving fee, which was enormous. So what could I do? I had to give $500. I wanted my piano. So I wrote a check for $500, and the person walked over there and gave it to them. They delivered the piano with other things. So I figured the piano, everything was there. So when I checked, I said, "Where are the piano legs?" "Oh, they're in garment boxes. They're all there with everything." Well, I'll tell you, we looked many times, high and low, because there were, of course, a lot of legal boxes, all kinds of things. And we looked high and low, and we could not find them. We looked many times. So they maybe did it as a vicious thing. I don't know what they did, but I never found the piano legs and the pedals of my beautiful piano. I mean, what I went through, what others go through, they go through different situations. It's disgusting. So anyway, and I had something else I was going to read too, which I may have in another section I want to read to you. But anyway, it's something to tell you about my career, why my music is not present at this time. So, and there are some other victims here I'm going to just read off. The one is not a banker's trust. He's with some other bank, but he had the same judge I did. And Rob DeBell, I think I mentioned this earlier. He said, listen, he said, the money you're looking for, Rob DeBella said to the victim, is stolen money. So in other words, it's not really yours. Now, what does it belong to the banks and the courts? And besides, how do we know that that's true? How do we know the money was stolen? And what a thing to say. That doesn't matter. Whatever the person was entitled to, that's what they are entitled to. The question is, whose money is it if it's not his? So besides, as I said, is his statement true? And the victim finally said to me, he doesn't want to be known at this time. He said, "Suzanne, we are not alone, and don't let them tell you you're crazy, because you're not." Okay, now another victim was not a banker's trust either. Oh, no, he was a victim of banker's trust. He has, no, Patrick, I don't think he was a victim of banker's trust. He wrote a book.
Yes, he was. John Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a victim of banker's trust. He wrote a book. And he's from a very known family. And he was abused in this way, with the not getting money. The third victim was Bankers Trust and Deutsche Bank. There was Ella Manny Place. They divided and conquered. They divided the children from the parents, and then the Judge Scarpino was also the judge. And they got a guardian for the parents. The husband died and the wife fought. However, They got half her money, but she got control of her other money. My group tried to help her a lot with Jonathan because Jonathan didn't get his inheritance. And they put her in a nursing home. And then she went through much heartache, stress, and court hearings, everything. Her life just ended in sorrow. Another Bankers Trust Deutsche Bank victim in Germany was Leo Kirsch, which is a very wealthy man with a big media company. And after many years in court regarding the taking of his media company, he was in court for many years. And with all the stress, he finally died. However, his wife continued with her family in her 80s and finally won a payout of over $1 billion, as I understand. It obviously was a probably much more valuable company. It was a large media company. Another Bankers Trust victim, Judge Scarpino worked 2 years for Bankers Trust before his judgeship, as we know. He waited 2 years after reporting this with the court, since it was a conflict. So finally, he got publicity, of course, with my picture, alerting the public that he previously worked for Bankers Trust, and finally recused himself. He had a legal obligation to disqualify himself. Well, I don't know who this is. We alerted another victim about this who was also affected with their father's estate in the same situation I was. And of course I got him to recuse himself but not disqualify, which he should have done. However, we alerted these other people about this because they were going to be in court under Judge Scarpino. But their lawyers told them, oh, don't say anything, just be quiet. So sure enough, Judge Scarpino admitted in court in their case, I worked for Bankers Trust for 2 years, does anyone object? However, their attorneys told them, as I said, not to object. You'd think the judge would rule in their favor. However, instead, that gave the judge free rein to stab them in the back, and the Judge Scarpino ordered them to pay the bank's fees on top of their own fees, which, by the way, was an enormous amount of money from them. He violated their legal rights, as I understand. And also, because of their name, they don't really want to be known. But it was a nightmare. And I was also told that Martin Luther King's estate was on 60 Minutes, also Bankers Trust account, and White and Case was involved, that there were problems whether the money would go to the estate or family in regard to his documents. Of course, these things are all kept quiet. I understand that Coretta Scott King, the owner, questioned the ownership, of her husband's papers. And when Rutherford claimed that they owned everything in his papers, and Coretta Scott King said, no, that's wrong, the family claimed ownership. So there was a big battle about that, in that situation. Now, Glendora, I've listed some Bankers Trust people. However, it doesn't just happen to be Bankers Trust people. As I said, the cancer has traveled all over. Of course, there are many more cases. There are a few with other institutions and banks. One victim from Westchester, New York, moved to England, a wealthy widow who just had to avoid the harassing and the manipulating. She was just going through too much harassment. So she was also with Anthony Scarpino, the judge, and she died from stress. Also, her homes were taken, much property, her money was taken, as I understand. She must have had some money of her own. She did live in a hotel in England, London. So, but there was much trouble, much money was lost. Another victim with Judge Scarpino died from cancer. He finally gave a small portion of money for her cancer treatment, and she had a law background. She because her father had a company. She went to law school and got a degree. However, the bank she was connected with would not honor the judge's ruling. So she died without having a chemo treatment. And the judge did not enforce it, as I was told. The bank didn't pay her, and Judge Scarpino wouldn't enforce it. Didn't enforce it. There's another very sad case. There's one more case I can mention, not with Bankers Trust. However, Judge Scarpino was in charge. The judge said in brief, "You take what I offer you or you get nothing." I think I told you that in the former episodes. As I was told, it would have just been crumbs of what he was entitled to, a lot more. So both of his attorneys were present and they just didn't speak up. Why? Because they got to the attorneys. As I remember, he refused any money since it was such a small portion. And he couldn't believe what the judge said to him. "You take what I give you or nothing." Now, another victim, a widow, fought for money that her husband left. These were attorneys that were involved. So it finally led to assigning her guardianship. So she decided to go to school. It was not Judge Scarpino, it was another judge. It was in Manhattan District in New York. So she decided to go to school and learn how to become a guardian and got rewarded for her work. When a court meeting came up for her, she got up and said, "Judge, I am a legal executor for the court system, so you surely do. I do not need one for myself." What could he do? He had to discontinue the guardianship for her. Another victim I know about is a very wealthy oil billionaire from Texas. His father was in Palm Beach going out to dinner, very elderly man, but he was very active for his age. Somehow the guardianship group got a hold of him and put him in some kind of a nursing home, and his son couldn't find him. He couldn't locate him. They wouldn't tell him, which I've heard this before too. Finally, through research, he found him. So since he had trouble getting him out of the home, his son hired an attorney, which cost into the millions, and finally got him home. However, after 1 month, due to the trauma, he died. Whatever they did to him, who knows, was no good. So, folks, be careful of guardianship, especially with the elderly. It depends how old you appear and how old you act. But, I have another situation here, another victim, which it's so sad, and I really can't tell her story, it's too sad. It's just, it involves her mother, who was thrown into guardianship, finally died, forcefully, I think, from what I've been told, she was died, plus the disappearance of her 2 children now probably for 14 years now. She doesn't know where they are. She hasn't seen them. It's unbelievable. And I understand Win Rutherford of White & Case is involved. Win Rutherford of White & Case got her to introduce him to many wealthy families, I presume to get their estates. And his wife is in real estate. It's so sad. She doesn't want to go public. And I can't go further with the information because the story is just unbelievable. Like a lot of things that we found out about this country and the world. Now, also, I want to end this by telling you about a large property that we had in Collingswood, New Jersey. It was a large building, and it was being sold after many years. I think it was, I don't know, 5 years after my husband died, whatever. A lot of controversy over it. Someone called me, said they offered a lot more money that in the end the bank sold it for, and I think they ended up selling it to the property manager, I believe. which they hired instead of Eddie after Eddie got his money. It's one thing after another. And anyway, the title people questioned it in detail because they look up the letters testamentary and they said that the property, it was Bankers Trust Company. So on the title paper, Win Rutherford and them put down formerly, because the title company asked, well, you have formerly, it was Bankers Trust of New York. Well, it was a fraud. They had to cover up. So that's what they said, because in the letters testamentary, it was definitely Bankers Trust Company that my husband had nominated. But they put formerly Bankers Trust of New York, which didn't exist at that time. So it was a complete fraud that they're guilty of. So the title is in question, of course. And who's gonna question White and Case? I think the Forbes had an article that we had saved which said black shirts and white shoes for White and Case law firm. I mean, it's a big name, but look what they do. They're professionals at stealing. And I think I told you about the owner when he died, how his partner of White and Case went through during the funeral, he went through his papers and things. So you see, it's in their DNA, and it sure has grown. Okay, and the other thing is, White and Case, as you know, abandoned the estate. It's all very serious. These things are fraudulent. They abandoned the estate 2 months after death, 2 or 3 months it was after death, and because they represented the bank for the repayment of a loan from my husband. So they were representing the bank. That's a complete fraud and a conflict. So these things are very serious, and they've all been overlooked, and the lawyers never let me know. I wonder why. Don't you ask a question why? Okay, and then they take $600,000 now from the account. I mean, these people simply do what they feel they want to do. How many minutes do I have left, Patrick? Oh, okay. You know, I want to state here that if you want to look anything up on the McCormick estate, we have a couple websites. There was one person we met when they did this to me with my home in Dobbs Ferry, and he tried to help out with an attorney, and he's actually an activist, and he does fight against these unjust things. And he put a website up for me. He actually wrote the bank too in Germany, and argued with him what was going on, and what are you doing to this person, and so forth. He really fought for me in many ways, and I won't really display his name, but he put up a website for me, and that's McCormick Estate Fraud. No, that's stopestatefraud.org. Okay, and then, okay, that that is stopestatefraud.org, what he put up. And then the other one that was put up, I believe by Elliot, wasn't it? By Elliot Bernstein, the fellow who's really fighting for his rights too. He put this up, and he knows a lot about the computers, the whole business, of course. And he put McCormickEstateFraud.wordpress.com. Okay, so if you people, anybody wants to look up more, there were a couple, one huge affidavit that was made up of the estate by my group with a lot of pertinent papers in it, which prove a lot. If anyone cares to read some of this stuff, that's in here too, in these, yeah, okay. And my email is S in Suzanne, V as in Victor, M as in McCormick, 231 at AOL.com. That's my email address if anyone wants to ask questions or have things clear. So, okay, I think I gave you, and I've even repeated a lot of things, because such as the abandonment of White and Case and the letters testamentary, it's like a Bible to the estate. And to think that none of the attorneys ever mentioned it, except for the last young fella I had when we found it in 2005, because of course it was like a puzzle. If I didn't have the group with me, how would I find out all the inner facts? And they figured I wouldn't, so how would Suzanne know anything, right? But I surprised them, and I formed a group, and they're very good at research, so they found a lot of things. My attorneys never told me, even though I spent over $1 million on legal fees. I mean, that's unreal. And I know people who spent a lot more money on legal fees, and didn't win. So I think it's worse than we know, and we know that I feel that Donald Trump, a lot of people will maybe disagree with me, but I think we have to face the fact that when he came on the scene, he did reveal a lot of criminality that was going on in this country and all over the world. But this country is very bad, and it's really traveled like a cancer. And the estate and trust is a big area for making money. Big. I mean, can you imagine what you can steal from estates? I mean, I just want to say, I think that Donald Trump did reveal an awful lot to the public. That he educated them, actually. And he did a great job of it. I mean, I've never seen any president who educated anyone that way. So, of course, the other people are very upset. Everyone, any of you who, come against him, of course, you're upset by all this. And, but anyway, let's hope that with God's help, we'll all survive and this thing will improve for generations later. And thank you for listening. Goodbye, and hope to talk to you later. Bye-bye.